But all of that has been made familiar by countless documentaries. The reason I came in October was because in that month it would offer a full-scale European-style Formula One Grand Prix race in the car park. Yes, for the first time ever, the last Grand Prix of the international season, the race that would decide the World Championship, was going to be fought out on a prefabricated cement-sided track in a space usually occupied by several thousand Detroit monsters, which would presumably be relocated somewhere in the adjacent desert. Nobody could be sure that anyone would come to watch the race. There was no guarantee that the gamblers would ever leave their dark casinos in order to find out what all the row was about outside. It's a big risk for take. The man who persuaded them to take it, the man who can persuade anyone to do anything, the Mr. Fix of the Grand Prix circus is Bernie Eccleston.
It's one of those things that just happen. I'm very friendly with the people here at Caesar's Palace, and they promote, as you know, all the big sporting events throughout the world, all the World Championship fights, the golf, the tennis. And I said they ought to have a Grand Prix series, you know, or one of the rounds of the championship. And it sort of started like that, and then after a year, somebody said, that's not a bad idea, and it just happened from there.
But even if the spectators never come, the costs of the first Las Vegas Grand Prix will be defrayed by the television coverage. Because I soon found that I wasn't the only documentary maker to have had the idea. A Japanese documentary crew had just checked into the Sands Hotel. A German documentary crew, headed by the renowned Karl Klaus Arthouse, had set up a command bunker in the Desert Inn. An Irish documentary crew had just arrived in Las Palmas. If I was to stay ahead, I would have to move fast. While the Americans got on with the job of building the giant-scale extric in the car park, I headed for the Neiman Marcus department store to check out a hot rumor that there was a fast car in the foyer. Objects, which indeed they are. It costs millions to get a 4-car team to the first practice session, and there's no guarantee that even one car will qualify. They come mainly from France, Italy, and Great Britain. Formula One cars are essentially European works of art, like Swiss watches and Wedgwood china. A team might have 25 highly skilled people with it, all of them speaking their native language and very reluctant to share their secrets with anyone else. They're like little nations. The Italians, for example, have packed their pasta and brought it with them, on the sound assumption that if they eat the local fast food, they will never get out of Nevada alive. The French mechanics have 6 pairs each of designer overalls with appliqued loops to hold spanners, a gentle but firm separation of the spark plugs, and gussets for spare gaskets. Sometime after the cars, the drivers begin arriving from their tax havens all over the world. Mario Andretti sounds like an Italian, but he's an American driving for an Italian team. One of the few Americans ever to have been world champion, Mario's about my age, which is getting on for a driver. To grow old is every driver's ambition. John Watson is an Irishman. He's a thinker. An uncomfortable thing for a driver to be, because there's a lot to the sport that doesn't bear thinking about.
It's not all, you know, crash, bash, wallop, you know, boys and comic stuff. It should be gentle, and it should be a rhythm, a flow to it. And if you can get that flow, then that's when you're really working well.
Nelson Piquet could be world champion after this race. Driving for Brabham, he comes from Brazil and looks like a Dudley Moore who can't play the piano.
I think if you don't want to take a risk, you don't go to motor race.
To become champion, Nelson must finish ahead of Carlos Reutemann from the Argentine. If Carlos finishes ahead of Nelson, Carlos will be world champion and will be seen posing beside the swimming pool in even more documentaries than he is now. Carlos is famous for his moods, but obviously doesn't believe in the needless expenditure of energy.
Oh, I'm going to see the car this afternoon or tomorrow morning, but there's nothing I can do on the car.
The young Ferrari driver, Gilles Villeneuve, kindly gave me an interview.
Comme ça va avec le Ferrari? Va bien?
You want it in French or in English?
Let's do it in English. Okay, let's start it again.
If I'd known then what we all know now, I would have asked him whether life feels sweeter when you live with the chance of losing it. He did lose it while we were editing this documentary. In Las Vegas, even the other drivers said he was the most gifted of them all. But you can do everything right, and everything can still go wrong.
it feels like bump, and we're trying to improve on that because it's. I think I can gain some time if we improve on that, and that's very difficult to find the right setup for springs and dampers and so on.
Isn't the Ferrari fairly tricky to drive anyway?
Well, it depends. If you're on pole by 1 second, it's never tricky, and if you're behind pole by 2 seconds, it's always very tricky.
Driving car number 1, the previous year's world champion is my young compatriot, Alan Jones. Only 34 years old, he's just announced his retirement, but intends to go out in a blaze of glory by winning his last race. Or he may change his mind and not retire. It all depends on whether he thinks the game is worth the candle, which he is smart enough to know he has been burning at both ends. Jonesy is a great weigher of the odds, except apparently at the tables.
Oh, yeah, I mean, like everybody, I've been a victim. You know, as soon as I registered in here, I went and had a bit of a flutter on the tables, but then I usually go back up to my room cursing myself and swearing and saying, you idiot. And then it gets it out of my system. I probably won't go back down there while I'm here.
How much did you lose?
$1,500. I made the big mistake. I was down a couple of, well, $400 or $500 and thought I'd go charging up to the room to get some more money to get it back, you know. And then I lost that, and then the fatal thing happened. A mate of mine walked past. That was the old desperate, you know, have you got any money on you? And he said, yes, unfortunately. So I said, well, loan me some quick. I need to get some money back, and I blew that as well. So, you know, it was just a total disaster.
On a warm summer's evening, on a train bound for nowhere, I met up with a gambler. We were both too tired to sleep, so we took turns of staring out the window at the darkness. Till boredom overtook us, and he began to speak. He said, son, I've made a life out of reading people's faces and knowing what the cards were by the way they held their eyes. So if you don't mind my saying, I can see you're out of aces. For a taste of your whiskey, I'll give you some advice. So you got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, and know when to run. You never count your money. When you're sitting at the table, there'll be time enough for counting when the dealing's done. Every gambler knows that the secret to surviving is knowing what to throw away, knowing what to keep. Cause every hand's a winner and every hand's a loser, and the best that you can hope for is to die in your sleep. And when he finished speaking, he turned back toward the window, crushed out a cigarette, faded off to sleep. And somewhere in the darkness, the gambler, he broke even. But in his final words, I found an ace that I could keep.
If a driver wants to get out with his stake intact, he has to do his homework. So next day, Nelson Piquet was out on the track in a Datsun sports car taking a look at the corners. He'd heard of my uncanny success with the blackjack machine and obviously hoped some of my luck would rub off on him. I was only too glad to help.
What's all that there? Is that catch fencing?
Yeah, catch fencing after I have all the tires there. From no problem with the concrete wall.
Yeah. So are you in low gear now, are you? What gear would you do all
Yeah, I
that
think
in?
it'll be here second or third, because you go put the gears very short, all the gears.
Our cameraman was in the passenger seat, and I was lying along the back shelf with a microphone to interview Nelson on his strategic thinking as he circled the course at a fraction of racing speed.
The corner is not that slow, all the corner medium corner, but of course you get you have a lot of place to get past. Here's a tight one. I think what's coming now will be the tight corner for the circuit.
This is the tightest corner, is
Yeah.
it? Dear, dear, dear. I feel quite sick already.
Yeah, I think it'll be sick here, tell you.
When Nelson got into the racing car, the course would look something like this. At this point, another car went past.
Who's that beside us? Is
That's
it Mario?
Mario, yeah.
So we're chasing Andretti. I think you two guys are racing.
Andretti was showing Nelson how he planned to go past him on race day. Nelson reacted in a very competitive manner. We were only doing about 110, but it feels like 1,000 when you're bobbing around in the back window like an ornament.
Is he trying to run away from you now?
Yeah.
This is the actual race we're in now, is it?
Well, I can say.
I can't tell you what it's like lying sideways in the back of a Datsun while you're doing it. While you and Andretti are driving flat out. Is this as fast as this thing will go? I mean, you couldn't...
Well, I think if I know the circuit better, I can go a little bit quicker.
I think I'm enjoying myself, but I can't tell. That was me with Nelson Piquet versus Mario Andretti on the Las Vegas Grand Prix circuit. We came second.
After a sleepless night with my book on how to win, I was up with the sun to watch the cars come out of the sheds for the first day of practice. When their engines are switched on, they suddenly stop looking quite so cute. Practice is for sorting out how to make the cars go faster. If they go too fast too soon, the cars leave the track and attempt to penetrate the surrounding countryside, with awkward results for the drivers. But it was a lucky day. Nobody got hurt, except in his pride. While the drivers were going faster, I was getting bolder with my interviews. The basic documentary interview was called the How Do You Feel? As in, how do you feel now that you've learned your house was robbed before it burned down? I asked Alan Jones how he felt.
Well, I'm going better on the track than I am in the casino, that's for sure.
There's this bit just before you get to this corner where the car sort of does that. Is the car supposed to do that, or is that
No,
you?
it's not. I still haven't really found the right way around here yet, and I'm still experimenting with some lines, and sometimes I'm turning in just a little bit too early, and I'm maybe having to make little corrections. That's what makes it look a bit wiggly.
Feeling quite pleased with this highly technical conversation, I waited for John Watson to come in from the track and asked him how he felt.
I'm dizzy, the circuit's bumpy as hell. These concrete barriers on either side, you get a sort of a tunnel effect, and you're driving down it, and you get this sort of speed rushing past you.
There could be no question that my how do you feel technique was improving all the time. But then I asked Nelson Piquet whether he felt dizzy.
A little bit.
Practice went on and on with everybody going faster and faster. They were all trying for that extra edge. Only one man was confident. Moments after the first day of practice was over, he was back beside the pool looking more beautiful than ever. I asked him how he felt about his chances.
Good. Very good. Yes.
As far as Carlos was concerned, it was all tied up. But for everybody else, only time would tell. Tomorrow was another day. The charioteers in the Circus Maximus used to ritually purify themselves before the race so that it would hurt less when a horse kicked them in the head. Nowadays, there is protective clothing, but the chariots are a lot faster, so it evens out.
1 hour and 50 minutes race. I think my car is a good car. I have a very good chance.
So Carlos tried to pass Nelson by going over the top of him. Mine would be the only documentary to feature this moment. The German, Japanese and Norwegian documentary crews were still asleep in their hotels, recovering from the previous night's trip downtown to the all-male exotic dancing. That made me an expert.
Nelson turned the corner, Reutemann came out like that, rode up over Piquet's back wheel and spun off. And apparently Nelson didn't even notice.
And do you know what sort of damage?
None.
None?
No.
To either?
Everybody came in denying it all.
That's why I can't.
But I was up there and I saw it. Yeah.
Which corner was the first one?
There's the far corner over there, right over in the far corner.
I subsequently learned that I was telling all these technical details to none other than Rob Walker, one of the great names in Grand Prix racing. But I probably would have told him anyway.
Bent Reutemann's car. It was Reutemann's spare car anyway.
Oh, it was his spare anyway? Thank you so much. Sorry.
Glad to be of help. Always ask the experts. No, they didn't notice. The mechanics don't know about it. They say. Did you know anything about Reutemann hitting?
I even had to tell Piquet's own mechanic.
Hitting it? No, I didn't.
You don't know about that? Because I was up on the roof of the hotel and I saw it happen. Everyone's denying that it occurred.
No, I did.
But Piquet was like this.
I did.
And Reutemann came up behind him and rode up over his back wheel and spun off, right?
Well, that was over there.
That was in the far corner.
Because I was standing there and I was just standing behind the pit wall. I saw
You saw Reutemann go up in the air?
Cloud of
now, how could Reutemann go
dust
up in the air without hitting something?
I don't know. I know Nelson was right behind.
Well, I've asked all you guys, and you all say nothing happened to Piquet.
I haven't seen any.
Nothing.
Sorry? Sorry,
I believe you.
I went off to tell Alan Jones, but unfortunately he already knew.
Did you hear about Carlos? I think he slapped Piquet.
Yeah, right. Be interesting to see what the press make of that.
What's it going to do to his car?
Well, that was his qualifying car. They're trying to repair it now. His race car's still okay. So Argentinian attacks Brazilian at Las Vegas, I think. It's sort of civil war in South America.
Meanwhile, practice was getting faster as the drivers, having sorted out their cars, strove for a good starting position. In the midst of the hullabaloo, only one man is tranquil. Signor Chiti has been managing the Alfa Romeo racing team since the invention of the internal combustion engine. I would like to tell him about Reutemann's crash, or just interview him, but it takes a smart documentary maker to catch him off guard, as he sits there working on a revolutionary new cooling system for his ankles. They go on practicing until time runs out and the scream of engines ceases to echo in the hills. So race day dawned. The day the odds would be fixed and the law of averages would play itself out. Most of the drivers would lose. After losing all night myself, with my last dollar I bought Eleanor breakfast and asked her how she felt helping someone go broke. The track was being vacuumed to pick up things that low-slung racing cars don't like, such as stones, twigs and pairs of handcuffs dropped by the security staff, who looked like outnumbering the spectators. In addition to all the regular cops in town, Caesar's Palace itself has hired a private army who instantly eject anyone without the right identification bracelet. This includes several of the drivers and nearly all the mechanics, who are reduced to bowling spare wheels past the checkpoints.
Yeah, they wouldn't let us in with the fans after the practice, and now they won't let us in to take them off anyway.
One journalist is caught out on the track without the proper ID. The cops pull their guns on him and chain him to a railing. thereby arousing the scorn of the press corps, who suddenly decide that the Las Vegas Grand Prix is a Mickey Mouse event, compared with the proper European races at which they customarily risk their lives by yawning and stretching too suddenly at the typewriter or leaning at the wrong angle against the bar.
There. And there was a misunderstanding between police and the flag marshals. And the end was Mike with handcuffs into jail. Hey, no way. No way to work here in Far West. It's not Europe, I know, but Nevada.
Whose fault was it? Policeman. Because he made a mistake?
He didn't understand what was happening.
That's half the trouble. People don't understand.
But he was in jail for 1 hour. Taken away from the
Tell you what to do, look, just take it easy. I'll get my monitor if you want me to, and you can have my monitor. I'll guarantee you get a monitor.
Bernie having smoothed the ruffled feathers, the girls appear. Anywhere in the world, wherever the Grand Prix circus pitches its tent, the girls materialize as if by magic, like flowers in the desert after a day of rain. Most laid back of all the beautiful blondes present, James Hunt looks on with all the excitement of a man who has seen it 1,000 times. James is a world champion who quit while he was ahead. But it took a crash to stop the great Sterling Moss, whose enthusiasm for the sport is undiminished. Jackie Stewart is another survivor. He's based in Geneva, and several of the Swiss credit institutes bank with him. Paul Newman, a formidable racing driver himself, wearing earmuffs to shut out documentary makers who might ask him how he feels. The stands are full, to the relief of the American organizers, who, believing that if people don't get something to watch while they're waiting, they might not wait, lay on the razzmatazz. That's probably Bernie again. He's been up there negotiating for fine weather. Before they all went out for the warm-up lap, I just had time to take a crack at Chiti in his own language.
Dottore, un momento per televisione inglese. Tutto va bene? La macchina è abbastanza veloce.
Unfortunately, I couldn't remember the phrase for how do you feel, so I asked him who he thought would win.
È una roulette, c'è là la roulette. Come roulette? Grazie.
After a lap to warm up their tires, they were on the grid. Carlos was quickest in practice and chose to start on the outside for moody reasons no one could quite understand, giving Jonesy the inside track. The race to the first corner was the only race there was. Jones won it and never saw the back of another car until he began to catch up with the tail enders. He led from start to finish.
I have a comfortable lead in a Grand Prix, I like to try and slow down and win in the slowest possible speed as opposed to keep pressing on and win in the fastest speed. Because the name of the game is winning. It doesn't matter what speed you do to do it. And if you've got a comfortable lead, you come back and you watch your revs and you look after your tyres and just make sure that the car's going to be running 100% at the end of the race. Whereas I think in gambling you just sort of keep on steaming in, which is something I don't do in racing. I try and work everything out.
Keep those guys away. Come on, these security!
Guys security! We need to clear now.
Get these guys up.
Jones came in to collect the big prize, the chance of being interviewed by Mark Thatcher. A driver himself, with his triumphs in Africa still ahead of him. Young Mark was apparently making a documentary for some American TV network. That meant he got an exclusive interview.
Just coming out of commercial break. Well, we're doing an interview or you guys going to jam me now?
An exchange of technical talk between experts.
Alan Jones, congratulations on a magnificent flag-to-flag victory. You're now retired Formula One Grand Prix driver, but was this your hardest race? For sure. You seem to be having a lot of trouble with your neck in the closing.
It's remarkable how people tend to develop pains in the neck when Mark is around.
All the other drivers seem to be coming in with tyre changes. Do you think the tyres played a crucial part in the race?
Oh yeah, my good years were fantastic. You know, I didn't have to nurse them all that much and they stood up real well.
Do you think this will give you any thoughts about coming back to Formula One racing next year?
When Mark was finished, I would have only a few seconds to get in there and prove myself as a Formula One interviewer.
At the booth.
Jonesy, what did you put in the petrol?
We're going to go.
Busters.
Coming through, please.
Back up.
Security, I'm coming through with our driver.
Nelson Piquet took over as world champion and straight away started running away from the documentary makers. It's nasty when they chase you, but it's lonely when they don't. If Carlos had been champion, they would have been chasing him. He wasn't, so they didn't. Some say he lost heart after that first corner. His manager told me that he lost third gear. Anyway, he lost. Maybe he just didn't like the odds against him. Later on, he shortened them the only way a driver can, by hanging up his flame suit for good. Jones went home to Australia. He really did quit while he was still ahead.
Thank you.
Maybe he just couldn't run the risk to his sanity posed by any more how do you feel interviews.
Really? How do you feel at this moment?
Oh, terrible.
Why do you feel terrible?
I just won a Grand Prix. It's always a bad experience.
The retiring world champion had pushed his luck just the right distance. Some say he stopped too soon, but too soon is exactly the right time. Because you can do everything right and still lose. Villeneuve went on driving the Ferrari into the following season, until, in just the time it takes to ask for the wrong card, he ran out of luck. John Watson won that race, and all the interviewers asked him how he felt. But all that lay in the future among the chances not yet taken. Here it was all over, and hindsight knows everything. I was a real expert now. I knew why Jonesy won. It was because he didn't lose. I knew why Nelson was champion. It was because Carlos wasn't. I was an expert on gambling, too. I won a lot of money, and if I hadn't lost even more, I would have finished ahead. The Grand Prix circus folded its tents and moved on. The cars that never go anywhere except around in a circle were packed in their shock-proof boxes and taken away by truck towards the waiting planes. The drivers were already at home in Zurich, Monte Carlo, Melbourne and Rio, having intimate little candlelit dinners with their accountants. I checked out of my hotel just as a documentary crew from the People's Democratic Republic of North Korea checked in. They were making a documentary about the crisis of capitalism and spent their first afternoon riding up and down in the elevators.